The Core Principles of Tap Dance, Building Efficient Technique from the Start. Episode 2, Balance, Weight Shifts, and Posture. Hi, my name is Sandra Kuga, and I'm a New York City-based tap artist. I've been immersed in tap for about 18 years and teaching for over 10. I've been fortunate to share my craft with audiences and students around the world, and now I want to share some of my insights with you. Having helped students of all levels gain confidence in their technique, I started noticing certain patterns that are universally applicable to pretty much any step. All too often, I see students learn only the what and not the proper how of tap technique, which leads to a lot of roadblocks as they progress in their journey, spending hours and hours taking class and practicing without seeing noticeable results, and staying stuck in the same level for years. My philosophy is based on the notion that if we practice efficient technique from day one, we can see sustainable progress as we move along. So if you're a tap student, no matter if you've been at it for a day or a decade, and you want to take your skills and confidence to the next level, this video series is for you. In the Core Principles of Tap Dance, I will give you all the tools necessary to master pretty much any step. The series is not about me teaching the steps themselves, but rather the underlying patterns with which we can approach any footwork. Just one more quick thing before we dive in. I would like to extend my deepest gratitude to all my teachers who have supported me in becoming the person and artist I am today. Without them, I would not be able to share these insights with you today. That being said, let's get started. How to balance better. Balancing and weight shifts are the two aspects of tap that can be most frustrating for students of all levels. But there are some simple concepts that will make it much easier for you to feel more confident in both. Let's talk about how to balance first. The default stance in tap is kind of like a boxer. Your knees are slightly bent, your torso is slightly forward, and you're ready to go in whatever direction you need to go at any given point. I remember that when I started out, one of the mysteries of tap technique was, how do I balance on the balls of my feet? Well, it's a fine balance between being too far up and too far down. You don't want to feel like you're on the literal toes of your feet, but you also don't want your heel to touch the floor. You want to stand on the literal balls of your feet. You can also think about it as standing on your entire front tap. So really having the entire ball of your foot cover the floor. This will already give you a good amount of stability. One other thing that will help you find this kind of sweet spot of effortless balance is to pay attention to the arch of your foot, so like that hollow area in your foot. Now, I don't mean actively engaging this area, because remember, we're aiming for no tension in any part of the foot or ankle, but rather feeling how this area can be felt ever so slightly as you bring your heels down towards the ground without actually touching the ground. So if you go on your toes, you'll feel it in your calves probably and in your toes. Now you drop down a little bit. You also see that I'm shaking a little bit because it's harder to balance on this smaller surface of my toes. So lower your heels down without them touching the ground. And then at some point you will feel just a tiny bit of awareness in your arch. And that's kind of the sweet spot that you want to be in. It's once your body understands where that spot is, it becomes pretty easy to balance there. And you can, that'll be kind of your default instead of flat-footed or being all the way up on your toes. If you're a beginner, I recommend practicing this in your daily life, like when you brush your teeth or wait for the train. As with most motions in tap, this is not something we really do in our regular life, ever. So the more you can internalize these ideas subconsciously, the more progress you will see in your general technique. The other major factor when it comes to balance is weight shifts. No matter how experienced you are, weight shifts can be a frustrating topic. Let me give you some tools to make life easier for yourself. The 3 levels of weight shifts. Conceptualizing the spectrum of how little or how much weight we put on our foot in 3 stages is a helpful guideline for troubleshooting when you feel stuck. Now, this is not some kind of internationally recognized official system bestowed upon us by the chief tap officer. It's just something that I made up to help students conceptualize this a little better. So let's see what the 3 levels mean. Now, level 1 means we don't put any weight on the foot. We make a sound and the foot comes right back up. Examples for this are touch or a shuffle. And there's really, with neither of these, there's no way we can ever stand on this foot.
Level 2 is the most ambiguous level and the one where most troubles can ensue. Level 2 implies putting slight pressure onto the foot, but not enough so that you can actually stand on it without falling. A good example for this is a ball change. Bringing a right foot behind your left. A ball change does not mean this. Now, I'm not putting the same amount of weight on my back and my front. This costs you a lot of time and really disrupts the flow of your movement. Instead, you want to think about bringing your right foot to the floor, but almost pushing yourself off of it to come back to the left foot. Try this out. Do a ball change and then freeze after the first sound. If you put the appropriate amount of weight on it, just enough, you won't be able to balance on your right foot for long and automatically will fall back or forward onto your left foot. Now, this innate momentum is something we harness quite often, where we don't micromanage every single sound, but rather use the natural flow of the movement and gravity to pick up the sounds on the way.
Now lastly, and this is probably not very surprising, weight shift level 3 means putting all your weight onto your foot. The most straightforward example is a stamp. You will be able to stand on this forever and your foot doesn't go anywhere. It's important to note that it's not enough to just think about your foot or your leg. If the rest of your body isn't on board, you'll still have trouble balancing. Our upper body leads our movement and our legs follow, not the other way around. So I can have all my weight on this foot. If the rest of my body is not there with it, then I'm still not really able to confidently and stably stand on this foot. Which brings me to coordinating the upper body, hips, core, and shoulders. This is a concept I would like to credit one of my main teachers, Barbara Duffy, for. The notion of your entire torso moving in one part. You don't really isolate a body part like you do in other dance forms. Instead, your hips and your shoulders almost always move in the same direction. Our first point of focus is our hips. Make sure to not tilt them sideways because that will cause instability. Either you lean away completely from the step, like here with the shuffle, or you go towards the sound completely, as for example, with a step heel. Yeah? So I lean away with my hips, or I go toward the sound. Likewise, be careful to not tilt your pelvis too far forward or backward, because tilting it forward will make you lean back, which will cause you trouble in a lot of ways because it's uncomfortable, it'll put pressure on your spine, on your lower back, and it also makes falling more likely and more risky. So just don't lean back ever. There's really no point in tap where you want to lean back or where it will help to lean back. But on the other hand, tilting your pelvis too far backward creates tension in your entire hip area. And it actually also limits your range of motion and keeps your legs kind of stuck in one place, because now I'm locked in this position. I can't really lift my legs as much or as flexibly as I could if my pelvis was more neutral. Also, leaning forward can also put pressure on your lower back, and we want you to be able to do this sustainably. So keep your hips and pelvis in a neutral and relaxed position. Now, of course, there's some variation depending on our unique anatomy, but as a general rule of thumb, if you feel tension or pain, or if you feel limited in your ability to execute motions, you will probably have to adjust the placement of your hips, which is also tied into our next point of focus, the core. You might have heard of the image of bringing your belly button towards your spine, maybe in Pilates or something. The idea is to keep your core slightly engaged, but not flexed or tensed. We just want to create stability for our hips and legs. Let's do a little exercise to feel this. We'll just do alternating stamps. So the whole foot, very simple, left and right. Now I want you to feel the core guiding you as you go from side to side. Meanwhile, your hips stay stable and your pelvis does not tilt. So you're not doing any of this. Yeah, you're not doing any of this. It's all moving in one part. And it's not so much that your core initiates the movement, because that can easily lead to like actively flexing it and therefore forcing our movements, but rather just staying stable and attentive in your core to prevent losing control. Yeah, because if my core is completely unengaged, then I'm losing that control, and especially when I'm doing more than just stance, it can be easy to just kind of start flailing and feeling like you're on a ship.
Likewise, your core also helps you to stay stable in your front-back axis. As I mentioned earlier, you always want your torso to lean slightly forward. This does not mean this, because that actually impairs your mobility. Rather, you want to think of the stability in your core that allows you to lean forward ever so slightly without hunching forward like this in your shoulders either. But you want to feel like you're standing solidly over yourself, not behind yourself or ahead of yourself. Yeah, really, it should all feel like you can ground yourself.
Our third and last point of focus is our shoulders. Remember, the shoulders and the hips usually move together towards the same direction. So let's say I want to do a step to the right. Yeah? My hips and shoulders move there together as one unit. Our movements should be led from the top down, not from the bottom up. It's just like walking. Try walking with your legs leading the movement. Now let's see what all this means in practice. Let's take shuffle stamp as an example. I will go through these following steps in great detail. Now keep in mind that this is really just to understand the motions and execute them as efficiently as possible. The goal is to internalize them so that you don't have to think about these things anymore. So to start, let's put all of our weight on our left foot, think weight shift level 3, leaning away from the shuffling leg. Hips and shoulders are in alignment and the core is stable. Now lift your right knee up as you learned in the first video with my knee going up on the imaginary string, and do your shuffle by straightening and bending your knee while still leaning away from it, because as soon as you lean towards it, you're going to fall. Now the shift comes as you prepare for the stamp. Instead of putting your weight on the stamp and then leaning towards it like this, you put your stamp down and then you remember, oh, I have to lean this way. You have to anticipate with your upper body first where you're about to go. So your shoulders, your core, and your hips set up your journey to the right so that putting your foot down for the stamp is a natural consequence as you finish the motion. So here you basically go from weight shift level 1 with no weight at all on this foot to weight shift level 3 fairly quickly with not much ambiguity. What can often happen is something like in between, and then we lose a lot of time. So really making that shift sharp will get you a lot of clarity. Now to add to this ambiguity, let's look at shuffle ball change. Again, you set up the same way as you just did for the shuffle stamp. You do your shuffle, but instead of preparing to shift your weight onto the right foot, your upper body stays leaning away. Otherwise, what you get is something like this. This is way too much work, and you'll lose a lot of time going all the way back on this leg. So instead of applying weight shift level 3 to both sounds of the ball change, which would be this, the first sound is much more of a level 2 category, meaning that most of our weight stays on our left leg. Therefore, we also keep leaning towards it. So I'm not leaning away, I'm staying leaning towards it. We kind of want to think about pushing ourselves off of the right foot. If you froze yourself here, you wouldn't be able to stand on this forever. Rather, you would naturally fall back onto your front leg, which is kind of what you want, because then your body naturally is in the flow of that motion. So combining these two elements, the shuffle stamp and the shuffle ball change, let's look at what that means for the first step of the shim sham, the simple version. So we start with the shuffle stamp. Now, actually, I'm going to turn around so it's easier to see. So I have the shuffle stamp. My leg is up. I lean away from this. Now, I go towards the stamp. At the same time, my other leg goes up. So I'm here, leaning away. I go towards it. Now, automatically, I'm leaning away from this side, so this side is free for the next shuffle stand. Then the third time I go, I have the ball change. So now I want to stay leaning away and do my ball change. Now I'm not going back all the way as we just looked at, but I'm staying facing forward, just pushing myself off that right leg. Yeah, so together we have here, I go towards the stand, I stay here, and now I shift over to this side. Now, as we go through these things in great detail, we obviously keep our motions quite big. I recommend practicing slowly to really internalize these concepts and ingrain them in your muscle memory so that you face less resistance as you progress. If your technique is efficient at a slow speed, it can be scaled quite quickly. That being said, if you practice getting faster, the motions basically stay the same, but they get smaller and, most importantly, sharper. When we shift our weight at a slow tempo, we can kind of take our time. But the same weight shift at a faster tempo, and I need to make the change much more quickly, like this. So slow, I can kind of do this. Fast, I want to make it sharp. And the more I know where I need to go with all my body parts, the more easily I can adjust as I go and anticipate what's next, which is exactly what we'll be talking about in the next video, preparations and transitions. That's it for today. Let me know in the comments how this is working for you. If you run into any trouble or have questions, feel free to write them in the comments as well. The next video is about preparations and transitions, another key concept, so make sure to check that out. Now, if you'd like to support me, the best way to do so is by subscribing to my channel, liking, commenting, and sharing it with your friends. That also tremendously helps me keep making these free videos. If you'd like to dive even deeper, consider checking out the educational content on my website. You can also subscribe to my newsletter called Tap to Expand for free to get lesson videos, early access to new courses, subscriber-only offers, and more. It's a once-a-month collection of free resources I don't share anywhere else. And if you want personalized feedback and guidance, I also offer virtual private lessons. You can find all the info in the video description below. Thank you everyone for watching. Happy practicing, and see you soon.